Welcome to the National Alzheimer's Summit. This is a critically important time for our nation, our world, and our work to conquer Alzheimer's. It's a time of turmoil, as we know. COVID-19, protests against racial injustice, economic insecurity, and a fiercely fought election. But after years of disappointment, it is also a time of optimism and hope in our fight to eliminate Alzheimer's. It was October 6, 2010, 10 years ago this month, that we created Us Against Alzheimer's. In 2010, the us in this new organization was a small group of friends who experienced Alzheimer's in our families. My wife, Trish, and I, Meryl Comer, and John Dwyer. Alzheimer's had taken Trish's grandmother, her mother, and now a third generation in her family. For others, for Meryl and for John, it was a mother, a husband, aunts, uncles, and indeed more than one for each of them. Between the three of us, there were perhaps 8 to 10 family members who'd been taken by Alzheimer's. All of us knew that unless we did more, Alzheimer's would threaten more of our loved ones, our children, our grandchildren, and generations of our own families to come, as well as the families of millions and millions of Americans. We wanted to bring together families, companies who could develop a therapeutic product, researchers, advocacy organizations, public health specialists who could prevent this disease from occurring, and government leaders, and to create a movement, all of us, to confront this horrible disease with the urgency, passion, and commitment to eventually treat and cure Alzheimer's. When I look back over the last 10 years, I wish Trish, who we lost in 2017 to a heart attack, we're here to see the progress that we've all made together. Here are the few things that all of us have helped make happen. Our nation set a goal of effectively treating and preventing Alzheimer's by 2025. Federal funding for Alzheimer's research is now at $2.8 billion, up from $448 million a year when we started. People beyond just Us Against Alzheimer's are talking about health equity in the Alzheimer's response. This is vital because Black Americans and Latinos are affected by Alzheimer's at significantly higher rates than whites. Yet research and health systems have often left many in those communities out. People are now paying attention to brain health, not just to brain disease. This is key because new research shows that it may be possible to delay or prevent up to 40% of the cases of Alzheimer's. What matters most to patients and caregivers, as we have developed this through a scientifically rigorous process, what matters most to patients and caregivers for treatment outcomes, as being heard by drug development companies, by regulators, and by payers like Medicare. Our fight against Alzheimer's is going global in a big way with our recent and new partnership with the World Economic Forum, where we've begun to build a diverse global population for testing new targets, a global clinical trial support system to speed new treatments to market, and a multinational learning system among national health systems to be able to detect and diagnose persons with Alzheimer's earlier in the course of their disease so that we can either prevent it or we can treat it earlier. As a result of all this progress, the despair and disappointment of the past have been replaced by promise and hope in the days ahead. I know Trish would have been very proud of these accomplishments. I am too, and so are Meryl and John. But we're not done yet. Let me talk a second about the context in which we're fighting this battle in 2020. At the beginning of this year, no one could have foreseen the scale of global COVID-19 pandemic. The coronavirus is a health crisis that's killed more than 200,000 Americans, 1 million people around the world, just in the last 7 months, it has caused broad disruptions that have rippled across families, communities, societies, workforces, and economies. This crisis has had devastating effects on people living with Alzheimer's and their caregivers. People are dying of Alzheimer's at rates higher than normal during this crisis because COVID attacks your brain as well as your lungs and your heart. Families are too often barred from visiting loved ones in nursing homes or assisted living facilities and helping with their care. And caregivers at home have been isolated from getting the needed support they need at home to provide assistance to their loved ones. While it didn't come on as suddenly, Alzheimer's is also a crisis. Even in the awful year of coronavirus, more people will die with dementia than will die with COVID-19. Let me repeat that. In 2020, more people will die with dementia than with COVID. Alzheimer's remains the most feared chronic condition by older Americans, more than cancer, more than flu, more than strokes, more than heart attacks, and indeed more than COVID-19 itself. But I'm frustrated that too few leaders around the world and in our country recognize that Alzheimer's and dementia is our next looming pandemic. It is here today, it is here at scale, it is here in large numbers, larger than COVID. The Economist recently described the rising levels of dementia as a global emergency that will take a devastating toll on nations, on healthcare systems, and on multiple generations of family throughout the world. What we've learned from COVID and the response to COVID is that leaders around the world can step up in response to a global pandemic when it's brought to their attention or hits them in the face. COVID's response, the response to COVID from leaders around the world and from industry, offers a model for the kind of commitment and response that we need to bend the projected growth curve for the emerging pandemic of Alzheimer's and dementia. Our job is to figure out how to make that transition, that translation from a sudden, fast-spreading infectious disease to a chronic, fast-rising, non-infectious disease that's actually bigger magnitude. How do we flatten the Alzheimer's curve? Where are our tests for this disease? Does our health system ready and prepared for our pandemic? What does warp speed government investment and commitment with industry there with them look like for Alzheimer's? We have some ideas, but this summit offers a real opportunity for us to hear your ideas and for us to march forward together. I will always want the pace in the fight against Alzheimer's to be faster. I will want progress to accrue sooner. But as I reflect on the last 10 years, and as I look at the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, I am seeing hope on the immediate horizon. New Alzheimer's drugs will be on the market next year for the first time since 2004. These include the first disease-modifying drug for early Alzheimer's and a new treatment, a symptomatic treatment for hallucinations and delusions. This year, already, a symptomatic drug is on the market for insomnia. The approval of 3 new drugs will spark a new wave of innovation in the field as other companies accelerate their efforts to avoid being left behind and having to compete with a standard of care that based upon these treatments. We're already seeing companies trying to speed up the recruitment and the progress in their clinical trials to make sure that they get their drugs on market quickly. I'm proud that Us Against Alzheimer's, with your partnership and support, the Us and Us Against Alzheimer's, is driving the actions that are helping in the fight against Alzheimer's, both in the therapeutic treatment and in the prevention of this disease. We are pushing for more research funding always, speeding treatments to market more rapidly, striving for interventions earlier in the course of the disease in the hope and the expectation that if we can slow this disease early by giving drugs to people before, at the very earliest stages of symptoms of the disease, we can prevent late stage disease and prevent the disabling characteristics of this disease at the end of the disease. We're continuing to fight for health equity and establishing a Center for Brain Health Equity at the behest of the CDC to assure access for communities of color, both to research and for treatment. We're fighting to get prevention interventions, a national prevention goal, to make sure that we can, if this emerging research is right, prevent up to 30 to 40% of cases of dementia. And we're raising up the voice of those living with the disease, including caregivers. When Us Against Alzheimer's was created in 2010, my late wife, Trish, said, "A cure for Alzheimer's, a fantasy, a wish, an impossible dream. But today's realities were yesterday's dream." We are right now on the brink of that reality and the end of that hope, because yesterday's dream is about to become today's reality. I've never been as optimistic as I am now. All of us must rise up, and I mean all of us, rise up to heed this hope right on the horizon and make darn sure it becomes a reality. That means we must have the following: effective, accessible, affordable treatments, prevention, means of diagnosis, the tests, as we have learned with COVID, how important the tests are that we know that we have this disease, all with the aim of getting everyone on effective drugs and ending this disease, a cure, a vaccine someday. A national movement to prevent Alzheimer's before it ever happens by detecting this disease early, before symptoms ever occur, and using those lifestyle changes and medical management of comorbidities that will enable us to prevent symptoms of this disease ever occurring. And elimination of barriers to clinical trials, treatments, and prevention for communities of color. We must keep hope alive in this fight. Hope is here. We need to grab that hope and take it forward. We must never stop until we end this disease. That's our commitment, that's our passion, and that's what we will do with you. Thank you for attending this summit. Thank you for giving us your ideas on how we can end this disease. Thank you. Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota has been a friend since she came to Washington many years ago, and as the funniest senator in the United States Senate. But importantly, she is one of our great champions in Congress. She knows firsthand the pain and challenges from Alzheimer's, what it means for a family. She's leading the charge in Congress for greater support for Alzheimer's caregivers. She's been a fierce advocate for increased funding for Alzheimer's research, and her presidential campaign was the only one with a strong plan to end Alzheimer's. We're so pleased that she is in the fight with us. Here's a message from Senator Amy Klobuchar.
Thank you to Us Against Alzheimer's for inviting me to speak today. Virtually, of course. Okay, this is the Capitol. It's real, but maybe it's a photo. But here I am. And it would be an honor if I was in person or like I am right now. Events like this bring people together, leading policy experts, innovators, researchers, industry leaders, those living with Alzheimer's, advocates and caregivers, all working toward the common goal of finding a cure. And I also want to thank Us Against Alzheimer's for its series, Giving Voice to What Matters Most, featuring stories of people living with this disease and allowing them to share their experiences, reducing the stigma and misconceptions about Alzheimer's. It's your work and events like today's summit that give me hope. Hope that one day, because of your work on the front lines, we'll one day live in a world without Alzheimer's. Your work matters. It makes a difference, and we need you now more than ever. Today, more than 5 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's, and by 2050, that number is expected to grow to nearly 14 million. And as so many of you know, watching a loved one suffer from Alzheimer's or dementia is tragic. And for the 16 million who are caring for family members, life is also difficult because you often lack the resources and support you need while providing nearly 18 billion hours of care every year. That's why I reintroduced the Bipartisan Alzheimer's Caregiver Support Act just last year to expand training and support services that so many of you depend on. This bill will allow patients to stay in the comfort of their homes longer and improve the quality of life and give you caregivers the respect and dignity you deserve. So I'll continue doing my part in the Senate. But that also includes working to ensure vital research takes place in places like in my home state, Mayo Clinic and the University of Minnesota, but other places all across the country. Congress can't do this alone. It's going to take all of us, including Us Against Alzheimer's and everyone participating today who are committed to ending this disease. During these challenging times, a lot of things have changed, but one thing hasn't, and that is your passion to end Alzheimer's. I feel it personally. My dad has Alzheimer's, and he's in assisted living right now. So I've seen the double whammy of dealing with that disease in your family and then having someone, in my case, he's 92 years old, get COVID. And I will never forget him standing behind that glass door while our family is outside with masks on, seeing him for what I thought was the last time. He looked so small, and he knew who we were, but he didn't quite know what was going on. It's really tough out there right now. And my dad got through it. But it made me think again of the unique challenges that all of you have with family members and those of you that are struggling with the disease have. It just makes it clearer more than ever through this pandemic that we must continue our work on behalf of caretakers, on behalf of people with Alzheimer's and dementia, and of course, working for the future and a cure. Together, I know we're going to do amazing things. So stick with it. Former Vice President Hubert Humphrey and former Minnesota Senator once said, "Life's unfairness is not irrevocable. We can always help balance the scales for others, if not always for ourselves." Thank you for believing that none of this is irrevocable, that we can balance those scales. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator, for your work in this fight. We share your hope that there will be one day when we've put a dagger through the heart of this devil disease. And I promise you that Us Against Alzheimer's, all of us, will match your passion and energy to reach that day. Our crusade to end Alzheimer's has been long. There have been disappointments along the way, but now there are new signs of hope, new signs of optimism for the days ahead. We asked others in this fight against Alzheimer's and our fight against Alzheimer's, what gives them hope? And this is what they said.
I have hope because we are learning so much about the intricacies of this disease compared to what we knew 5 or 6 years ago. We know an order of magnitude more. Projects that have enabled the dissection at the single cell level of what's happening in the brain of somebody with Alzheimer's compared to somebody who does not. Efforts to try to take that information and develop the next generation of interventions, therapeutics, those are pretty breathtaking. And also the talent that's come into the field, because that, we have various speeches we make about what resources we need for research. The most important resource is the people, whether it's the researchers or the care providers or the caregivers at home. It's the people that really are going to make this work. And my dedicated effort here, I hope, is to try to support that in every way I can. And that gives me hope. There's a quote I'm very fond of, which is from Peter Levi, that says, "Hope in every sphere of activity is a privilege that applies to action." Kind of suggesting if you have hope, but you haven't made it into an action statement, maybe you're not quite doing what you should. You didn't use that privilege.
Jerry, what gives you hope in the fight against Alzheimer's?
It is the hardworking people who are trying to find a mitigation of the disease.
We hope that soon there will be a blood test that identifies Alzheimer's and the approval of medications, which will bring hope to the entire community and will enable us to enroll more people in clinical trials to find a cure.
Of course, I'm hopeful. Not only we have seen scientific and technological advances, but I think that we now work together. Not only we are more scientists devoted to Alzheimer's disease, but we recognize each other better. People living with dementia, their care partners, health providers, it's easier to see each other and work together now.
Hope springs eternal where I come from. And I've seen a lot of changes, even though there's still a lot to do. But growing up on that farm in Alabama and with parents, neither of whom finished elementary school, but they certainly created an environment of hope, which I will always appreciate and always value. So I have hope because I have known people and continue to know people who are committed. People like Joyce Radenberg, who I've noticed, and the reason I joined the board, not only caring, but also being determined that we can make a difference. I have hope.
We're grateful for the support and partnership of people such as Dr. Collins, Jim and Jerry Taylor, Dr. David Satcher, and others. Another sign of progress, of hope, is that we're changing the conversation from simply talking about brain disease to talking about strengthening brain health. Our work to promote brain health, especially in speaking to women and about their families, gained a powerful, huge boost and a powerful new voice when Mandy Moore joined our Be Brain Powerful campaign. Here's a message from Mandy.
Hi, I'm Mandy Moore, and I'm so excited to be with you at the Us Against Alzheimer's National Alzheimer's Summit. And I'm excited to be the new ambassador for the Be Brain Powerful campaign. So I play a character named Rebecca Pearson on NBC show This Is Us, and it's a role that I've really cherished and one that has touched my heart over the last 4 seasons. Without getting into the weeds of who my character is, if you haven't seen the show, she is the matriarch of this family, and you get to live with her throughout different chapters and decades of her life. And last season, my character was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and with This Is Us, you get to see how she and her family sort of live with the range of challenges and emotions that come along with that diagnosis. I have honestly learned so much through my own research and discussions with experts and people living with Alzheimer's and other dementias. Now, I've been learning a lot about the importance of early detection and diagnosis for Alzheimer's disease, but unfortunately, early detection doesn't happen nearly often enough. In fact, 60 to 80% of these cases just go unrecognized. Why does that matter? Well, it matters because diagnosis often comes too late in disease progression, and then the impact felt on families is devastating. That's why it's so important for all of us to be having this conversation now and understanding our brain health. This is the first step in breaking down these barriers by having these conversations sooner with our girlfriends and our loved ones, and most importantly, with our healthcare providers. And that's also where Be Brain Powerful comes in. The campaign was launched by Us Against Alzheimer's, and former First Lady Laura Bush is the honorary chair. I am looking forward to helping spread awareness about brain health. You know, new studies show that we can take an active role in delaying or even preventing dementia. In fact, Us Against Alzheimer's is leading an effort to encourage our government leaders to embrace a national prevention goal for Alzheimer's. Now, this is a groundbreaking effort to reshape the national conversation we have around this disease. How can we lower our risk? important question. We can do that by caring for our minds and our bodies, focusing on our mental and emotional health, eating well, sleeping, and exercising. I took the Brain Health Challenge myself, and it really did serve as a daily reminder of the things that I know I can do to care for my brain. Our brains should always be top of mind, pun intended. So join us.
Thank you, Mandy. We're so pleased, so proud, so grateful to have you join this campaign, adding your voice to this movement about what it is like to experience Alzheimer's. We are honoring Mandy with our biggest award on Wednesday night at the Trish Vredenberg Gala. Us Against Alzheimer's offers its heartfelt thanks to the sponsors of our National Alzheimer's Summit. We are grateful to our premier summit sponsors, Acadia, Biogen, Eisai, and Otsuka, and to our platinum level sponsors, Home Instead and Volunteers of America. We also appreciate and value all our gold and silver sponsors. Their support makes possible this National Alzheimer's Summit and the Trish Vredenberg Gala.
What a great way to kick off the 2020 National Alzheimer's Summit. Hi, I'm Russ Paulson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Us Against Alzheimer's, and let me add my thanks and my welcome. We have some important conversations to have over the next couple of days, and we're glad to have you along with us. We'll be starting up again tomorrow morning, 11:30 Eastern, with a conversation about brain health and how you can improve yours. We'll also talk about arts and brain health. And then at 2 o'clock Eastern, we begin our town halls. Now, the first town hall is going to be about how do we bring the globe together to speed treatments? How do we do something innovative, something never done before, bringing a whole system together to make Alzheimer's drug discovery, Alzheimer's understanding faster than it ever has been. And then we'll go on to a conversation about an area that we pioneered here at Us Against Alzheimer's a 3 years ago, early intervention. What are we doing? What can we do to prevent Alzheimer's disease? What can we do as a country to prevent Alzheimer's disease? Not something we would have even thought of a few years ago as something that you could do, but you can do something to prevent Alzheimer's disease. And we'll hear about that tomorrow afternoon. Then at 5 o'clock, a really exciting thing for us to do here at Us Against Alzheimer's, the National Alzheimer's Summit, a chat between our founder, George Vredenberg, you just saw, Dr. Francis Collins, the head of the NIH, and Dr. David Satcher, former Surgeon General, former head of the CDC, in conversation. We start up again on Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern with conversations about your brain health and what can you do. And then our town halls pick up again at 2 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern. The first conversation about brain health equity, something we've been talking about here at Us Against Alzheimer's for several years. This year, we'll take a hard look at what can we do to address the effects of systemic racism on brain health. And then we'll have our final town hall of the day. It's hard, as George said, to not think about the pandemic that is Alzheimer's disease, but it is impossible not to think about the pandemic that is COVID. We'll have a panel on how do those two intersect? How do they interact? What can we learn from our nation's efforts around COVID that might inform our nation's efforts around Alzheimer's? And then we wrap the whole thing up at 7:30 on Wednesday night with the Trish Vredenberg Gala. Go to the link on your screen right now, sign up, and join us. It does take all of us to do this work. George talked about hope on the horizon, but hope doesn't just show up. Hope takes a lot of work, and it takes all of us against Alzheimer's. Thanks for joining tonight, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning.